So the World Cup. Man, it brings us all just so much pure, unadulterated joy, doesn't it? I mean, it's a global carnival. But as we explore the history of the sport's governing body today, we really have to acknowledge the dark, systematic corruption lurking just beneath the surface of the beautiful game. Today, we're going to trace exactly how the people in charge managed to turn a massive global celebration into something, well, far more cynical.
Okay, let's dive into this. First, we'll look at how FIFA went from a non-profit to a political tool. Second, the Havelange patronage system. Third, Blatter and systemic bribes. Fourth, a mafia-type operation. And finally, we'll wrap up with the modern greed machine.
So to start, I want you to think about this incredible contrast. Officially, FIFA's legal status is, believe it or not, a registered non-profit organization. Literally, a non-profit. But the actual reality is that it's a multi-billion-dollar enterprise with a long, documented history of coddling authoritarian leaders.
Which brings us to the central question framing this entire explainer. How exactly does a quaint little nonprofit become a dictator-coddling enterprise? You know, this isn't just a sports story. It's really more like a thrilling, true crime historical journey. And to fully understand it, we have to go all the way back to the very beginning.
Section 1, Nonprofit to Political Tool.
Let's trace the early timeline here. FIFA was founded in Paris back in 1904 by just 7 European nations. And the very first World Cup in 1930, it was incredibly modest. We're talking just 13 teams. But then, things take a pretty dark turn. By 1934, Benito Mussolini effectively uses the Italy World Cup for flat-out fascist propaganda. And just 4 years later, in 1938 in France, Nazi salutes are literally being allowed on the pitch. Now, FIFA's president at the time, Jules Rimet, held a fierce belief in this idea of theoretical neutrality, basically believing that sport could simply unite the world. But in practice, well, that theoretical neutrality ended up providing a massive global platform for dangerous authoritarians to sanitize their image.
And honestly, this quote perfectly captures Rimet's naive realization. He stated, "I have the impression that it was not FIFA that really organized the World Cup, but Mussolini. But you know, it was a little too late. The fascist government had so deeply attached itself to the tournament that Mussolini even had a gigantic Il Duce trophy built, and it completely dwarfed FIFA's actual prize."
Moving on to Section 2, the Havelange patronage system.
So right at the center of this era is a massive web of patronage. Enter João Havelange. He positioned himself as a champion for the developing world, traveling to over 80 countries just to secure votes. He absolutely supercharged global expansion by giving these federations much-needed regional development funds. Sounds great, right? But there was a catch, a big one. The funds were strategically given in strict exchange for fierce loyalty and guaranteed votes to keep him in power. To fund this kind of massive patronage system, Havelange needed serious cash, which brings us to this absolutely staggering number, $13.9 million. This represents the combined bribes taken from the marketing firm ISL by Havelange and his son-in-law. By partnering with massive corporations for broadcast and marketing deals, FIFA essentially institutionalized corporate criminality right at the very top of the organization.
Section 3, Blatter and systemic bribes.
Now let's look at how this corruption compounds under Sepp Blatter's reign. The source material outlines a factual record of just unbelievable controversies. He actively cultivated close ties with Vladimir Putin and allied with Equatorial Guinea's dictator. In terms of public missteps, oh boy. He famously interrupted a minute of silence for Nelson Mandela after just 10 seconds and, bafflingly, suggested women footballers wear tighter shorts to generate more interest. Yeah, but most consequentially, he oversaw the heavily corrupted 2018 and 2022 World Cup bidding processes, a time when countries were literally throwing money at FIFA executives just for votes.
And this brilliantly illustrates the scale of the resulting fallout. $150 million. That's the massive amount in bribes uncovered by a U.S. Department of Justice investigation. This historic probe resulted in charges against more than 50 individuals and corporate entities. The system FIFA had set up had entirely corrupted the business of worldwide soccer, twisting it to serve the executives' own interests.
Which leads us into Section 4, a mafia-type operation.
Just compare the unbelievable true crime rap sheets of these two powerful executives. First, you've got Jack Warner, the CONCACAF boss. He didn't just solicit a $10 million bribe for the South Africa World Cup. He allegedly embezzled earthquake relief funds meant for Haiti straight into his personal bank accounts. And then you have Chuck Blazer over on the executive committee, who pled guilty to taking massive bribes. And get this, he lives such a lavish lifestyle that he rented a $24,000 a month apartment in Trump Tower exclusively for his cats. Yes, you heard that right, for his cats. It showcases a total, systemic lack of checks and balances.
And if you want to know how they treated anyone who dared question them, well, listen to Jack Warner's aggressive response to a BBC journalist who was just making a polite inquiry about his finances. He said, "If I could have spit on you, I would have spat on you, because you're garbage." It really just highlights the sheer impunity, the arrogance, and the total lack of accountability these executives operated with before the Department of Justice finally intervened.
Finally, Section 5, the modern greed machine.
So what about today? Well, under current President Gianni Infantino, the money spigot is wide open. FIFA is projecting a record-shattering $11 billion in revenue for the current World Cup cycle. Think about that for a second. That makes it the most lucrative sporting event in history, generating way more revenue than the actual GDP of dozens of its participating countries.
And when you look at modern-day scandals, they stack right up alongside that immense wealth. Our sources detail Infantino taking a massive $6 million salary and, ironically, renting space at Trump Tower. During this current cycle, we've seen political meddling and visa restrictions play out right on the global stage. U.S. visas were denied for Iranian staff and the top Somali referee. An Iraqi player was detained for 7 hours in Chicago. We've seen subpoenas issued over astronomical ticket prices that are just completely ripping off regular fans. We also saw then-President Donald Trump successfully pressure Infantino to review and overturn U.S. star Flo Balogun's match suspension. The source material notes that Infantino largely refuses to push back against political leaders, preferring instead to just keep the massive commercial machine running smoothly.
And speaking of who gets left behind by this machine, wrap your head around this number. $15,000. This is the staggering deposit the U.S. government required from fans coming from countries like Cape Verde, literally just to get a visa. Policies exactly like this prove that the event is increasingly restricted to the global 1%, pricing out the everyday, passionate fans who are the actual lifeblood of the sport.
And this hyper-capitalist approach, it's now actively altering the sport itself. The FIFA greed machine isn't just about those skyrocketing ticket prices. Many critics point out that new initiatives, like so-called hydration breaks, are actually simply a guise to cram in more TV advertisements. It seriously threatens to turn the beautiful, continuous game of two halves into 4 ad-friendly quarters, prioritizing commercial broadcast deals over the natural rhythm of the game.
Ultimately, it leaves us with this stark juxtaposition. On one side, you have the pitch, the beautiful game played by world-class athletes, bringing genuine joy and uniting fans worldwide. But on the other side, you have the luxury box, the truly ugly reality of the global 1% cutting back room deals, counting billions of dollars in cash, and coddling politicians. A world often completely divorced from the spirit of the sport itself.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Can we protect the beautiful game from the ugly grip of the global greed machine? I mean, it is so hard not to watch the sport we love. But as this explainer shows, we absolutely must look deeper than the slick propaganda on the surface. We can enjoy the games, sure, but we must demand accountability from the people running them. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll catch you next time.